Becky, I want to start with you. You opted out of vaccinating your son, who is now 14 years old. You stopped vaccinating him after his 6-month mark. Why did you do that?
I did that because of my older son's vaccine reactions that he had as an infant. My son, I took him in for a hepatitis B vaccine. He immediately developed a hideous diarrhea. Later that night, developed a fever, arched his back, screamed. If I would have known as a young mother these were signs of encephalopathy, brain swelling, I would have known to get him to a doctor right away. But after that evening, his health deteriorated for the next 2 years, and at 2 years and 9 months, he was diagnosed with autism. We didn't put the pieces of the puzzle together until I had my second son, who also started exhibiting some strange vaccine reactions. And at that point, I had to really weigh the options, and my husband and I decided that our children's neurodevelopment was more important than vaccinating for these diseases. And they Becky, could have had permanent damage.
And let me just ask you, because you obviously have a very compelling story. What do you say to parents who say that by not vaccinating your children, you are exposing other children to these communicable diseases like whooping cough and measles?
I say that it's their right to vaccinate their children, and if vaccines work as the way that they're supposed to, their children are safe. There's no reason to worry about my child. Their children are vaccinated. I'm the one that's taken the calculated risk for a very good reason.
Okay. Dr. Karp, what do you say to that? If other children are vaccinated, why would they be exposed to the communicable diseases?
Well, we all live in a community together. And if you don't get vaccines, your child's going to have a higher risk of getting illnesses. Sure, if the other child's vaccinated, that may protect them. We wish vaccines worked 100%, but they don't work 100%. So it does increase the risk that a child, even who has had vaccines, can get an illness. But I'm more concerned about the baby in the family or your next-door neighbor's baby. Maybe they're not old enough to get the vaccine yet, and your toddler plays with them and can spread the illness to them. That poor, unprotected child is totally at risk. And we're especially concerned about whooping cough, which is more contagious than any other known disease. Okay. And so if you live in a farm, I have no problem if you choose not to get the vaccines. But if you're benefiting by living in a community where everyone else is getting vaccinated, and the next baby born on your block is depending on your children getting vaccinated, I think it's your responsibility. And otherwise, I think you're really freeloading on the efforts made and the exposure made by the other families.
Okay, Becky, do you want to respond to that?
I absolutely want to respond. The problem that my children had is that I took my older son to an immunologist after he was diagnosed with autism. He ran a titer test, and every vaccine that we tested, my son did not develop titers. So even if I continued to vaccinate him, he would still be unprotected, and there's no reason to vaccinate. He did not receive protection from his vaccines. He was vaccinated, but he was not immunized. It didn't lead to immunization.
That is such an interesting point, Becky. I'm glad you raised it, because I have here, Dr. Karp, I want to ask you about this, the whooping cough report. This is from the California Department of Public Health. And it talks about this year and how there's been this spike in pertussis, as it's called. And I want to read it to you because it's pretty fascinating. Pertussis is cyclical, and it peaks every 3 to 5 years as the numbers of susceptible persons in the population increases due to the waning of immunity following vaccination. In other words, the vaccine is only good for 5 to 10 years, and then you're no longer immunized. So it's not just it's not just parents, in other words, who are opting out of vaccinating their kids. It's parents who think that their kids are immunized and it's worn off.
Well, that's absolutely the case. We worry most about the littlest children because they're the ones who die from whooping cough and have to be hospitalized. Anyone can get whooping cough, but it turns out to be more of a bad cold, a terrible cough as you get older. This is the crazy thing. We've weakened the vaccine. We were seeing some side effects of the vaccine, so to protect children from side effects, we weakened the vaccine. We made it more purified, and as an effect of that, it made the immunity last not as long as the old vaccine, but it was more purified, so we had fewer more children with fewer side effects.
Becky, very quickly, we're running out of time, but people say that you and parents like-minded with you are anti-vaccine. Are you anti-vaccine?
I'm not anti-vaccine, and actually I do see benefit for newborns getting the pertussis vaccines. It's in our community. You know, there's a moderate stance here. We need to think about this moderately and do the best that we can for each of our